Napoleon Bonaparte is a famous French emperor and commander, who went down in history with his strategic talent to command many thousands of armies both on the battlefield and on the global map of Europe and Russia. However, today our article will be devoted far from the military talents of the famous Frenchman, for the emperor sought to be a conqueror, not only states, but also women's hearts. From which the fame of the love adventures of Bonaparte survived the centuries. Thanks to these adventures, Napoleon not only became a kind of ancestor of the Napoleon complex, which means that a small and unassuming man will be out of his skin to prove to others that he is big and important, but also became known for numerous fetishes that literally eat the soul of the famous commander. For example, it is a well-known fact that before his return to Paris, a few days before his arrival, Bonaparte sent his beloved Josephine numerous messengers with letters. And in one of the letters asked her not to wash for 3 days before her arrival. The reason for this request is interpreted differently, but it was. Either way, Bonaparte got his pleasure either way. But did women get their share of the pleasure? The question is very, very burning and is the main leitmotif of this article. For at the moment when the body of the deceased emperor lay on the surgical table for autopsy, the public found out that the male dignity of the outstanding Frenchman had a truly childish size, about 1.5 inches in a calm state. What is false and what is true? Let's find out further in the video. It is funny that after his death on May 5, 1821, this part of the body of the deceased emperor never found peace. Since the body of the deceased ex-ruler of France was open, partially divided, and partially transferred to souvenirs, teeth, ribs, pieces of intestines, etc. The very organ of Napoleon was transferred to the property of chaplain Paul Vignali, personal spiritual advisor Bonaparte during his imprisonment on the island of St. Helena. In this case, according to the existing legend, Paul asked to cut off this organ of the pathologist surnamed Antimarchy only as revenge against the hated Napoleon, as in life he had just the most disgusting temper. From what often annoyed Vignali public accusations of impotence. So it is or not, it is difficult to judge in view of the antiquity of events, but until 1916, the remains of the sexual organ were on the island of Corsica in the property of the descendants of the chaplain. After that time it was exhibited at European auctions and togas and, according to available information, at the moment is in a private collection in the United States of America at the American urologist John Latimer. For our narration this story is important, first of all, because the valuable artifact really had a length of only 1.5 inches. But this is the property of any separated flesh. No matter how it was not preserved, no matter how carefully stored, it shrinks and shrivels with time. So that in his lifetime the phallus of Napoleon Bonaparte could reach 4 inches in the state of erection, which is at least something in comparison with the originally stated parameters. Despite this, Napoleon's manhood really did not correspond to his conceit and level of ambition, from which it is high time to start analyzing numerous love affairs of the outstanding Frenchman. Marie-Henri Bellum, better known by his pen name Stendhal, is the author of The Life of Napoleon. Since the biographical novel was written only a decade and a half after the death of the emperor, the information given in the book can be considered reliable and written on the hot tracks. The book covered not only Bonaparte's feats of arms, but also his nocturnal adventures. Thus, Stendhal directly describes that wherever Napoleon was, his guests became the best women in the area where the boot of the invincible conqueror stepped. However, after a woman crossed the threshold of the bedchamber of the famous Frenchman, she was waiting for the deepest disappointment. The emperor rarely made a run, for a time exceeding 3 minutes. From which the ladies left in a slight confusion, often before realizing what happened in general. Another feature of Napoleon is his total distraction. Emperor during bed games rarely took his eyes off the pile of papers on the table and most often did not even remove the sword. This circumstance vividly characterizes the way ascetic Bonaparte treated such a piquant basic need of a man. In conversations with his brother Lucien, Napoleon often compared a woman to a dirty stick, which cannot be taken without getting his hands dirty. This comparison, the emperor wanted to emphasize that it is women push men to commit the most reckless acts, from which he sincerely advised his brother to stay away from the extra attention of noble ladies. As a young man, Napoleon was painfully aware that he was not attractive, and resented those men who were lucky. As his status grew, so did his attractiveness, which allowed him to retaliate. His rudeness was legendary, especially if he found a woman intimidating. Once he said to a new acquaintance, "Madam, I was told that you are not beautiful." They were certainly not exaggerating. Despite the consumerist and dismissive attitude to the fair sex, his first wife, Josephine Beauharnais, Napoleon Bonaparte loved like crazy. History has preserved hundreds of letters that Napoleon wrote to his beloved from all corners of the globe. In these letters, the emperor not only shared his successes and experiences, but often expressed his wishes for a special way to celebrate the next return of the ruler in the capital of the newly created empire. Here the emperor was not shy in expressions. What can be emphasized is that Bonaparte was an egregious masochist, who forever suffered from jealousy and alleged cheating, and, perhaps, enjoyed it. And there was a reason for it, as Josephine was of ignoble origin, at the age of 16 married the Viscount Alexander de Beauharnais and from the first marriage had 2 children. According to the memories of contemporaries, Josephine was a woman of very broad views, as she was brought up as a true Frenchwoman, for whom and treason, not treason, and so, entertainment. But the strict, jealous Corsican Napoleon Bonaparte, on the contrary, was too correct, but for the sake of sincere love, stepped on the throat of his own prejudices. From which went to meet windy Josephine with all the passion and openness of a great heart. However, the nature of his adored wife Napoleon Bonaparte knew perfectly well why suspicions of treason, which so amused the empress, like the ghosts of murdered soldiers, haunted Napoleon until Josephine's death in 1814. The story of how Napoleon Bonaparte and Josephine Beauharnais met and fell in love with each other deserves not only a separate video, but a whole series. One thing can be said: Napoleon loved his wife with all sincerity, but many facts indicate that Josephine's reciprocal feelings were not as great as those that literally blazed emperor. Despite this, it was Josephine who was able to convince the complex Napoleon that he is a great winner not only on the battlefields. Andrea Stewart writes, she ceaselessly changed her appearance, creating her beloved illusion of endless variety. She also understood the importance of the setting of her romantic encounters. She paid close attention to the decoration of her bedrooms. Her love of mirrors multiplied the images of love and created the illusion of an orgy. Perhaps that is why the emperor carved out at least a week or 2 in his busy schedule to drop everything and break away to Paris, in the arms of the woman he loved, in whose warmth and care he needed more than anyone else. And this is not about the size of ambition.